The universe is vast, indifferent, and full of mysteries. Among these mysteries, none has puzzled the Galactic Council more than the peculiar behavioral patterns of humans. In a cosmos governed by the brutal efficiency of natural selection, where predator and prey engage in an eternal dance of death, humans stand as an anomaly, a species that defies the fundamental laws of survival. The compassionate inquiry, formerly known as the nebulous inquiry before its recent rechristening, hung in low orbit above the planet, designated as Terror 3. The ship's sleek, obsidian hull reflected the amber glow of the planet's atmosphere, creating an ethereal halo that belied its scientific purpose. Inside the vessel's observation deck, 3 figures stood motionless before a wall of holographic displays, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and scientific curiosity. Captain Zethrol, the ranking officer aboard the Compassionate Inquiry, stared at the central screen with 7 eyes, narrowed in suspicion. His scaled skin, normally a calm azure, had darkened to a troubled indigo. Beside him, Science Officer Krell's tentacles were coiled tightly, a sign of intense concentration among the cephalodians. The third observer, Communications Officer Pix, remained unnaturally still, her crystalline form refracting the light from the screens into rainbow patterns across the deck. "This cannot be accurate." Captain Zethrol finally broke the silence, his voice a guttural rumble that reverberated through the chamber. "Run a full diagnostic on the observation equipment." The central screen displayed a scene so improbable that it defied the collected wisdom of 27 spacefaring civilizations. A human, a known omnivorous apex species with tool-making capabilities, sat beside a dying gray wolf, another apex predator. The human's hand gently stroked the wolf's fur, offering comfort as the predator's life ebbed away. There was no sign of fear, no defensive posturing, no indication that the human recognized the natural threat the canine represented. "The equipment is functioning at optimal parameters, Captain," Science Officer Krell replied, her voice a melodic whisper. "We have been observing this interaction for 27 standard minutes. The behavior is consistent and appears to be intentional." "Impossible!" Captain Zethrol spat. "No species willingly comforts its potential predator. This defies every evolutionary principle we understand. Predator and prey cannot coexist in such intimacy. It must be a territorial display, a dominance ritual we do not yet comprehend." Communications Officer Pix shifted, her crystalline body emitting a soft chime. "Captain, we have observed similar behaviors in multiple human settlements across the continental landmass. Our records show humans engaging in mutual grooming behaviors with other predator species, including felines, classified as tigers and lions, as well as aerial predators known as eagles. These interactions appear consensual and non-threatening." Captain Zethrol's scales fluttered in agitation. "I want a full report prepared for the High Council immediately. This aberration cannot be permitted to continue without analysis. If humans are manipulating the natural order, we must understand the implications." He turned to Science Officer Krell. "Continue observation and record all interactions. I want a comprehensive analysis of hormone levels, stress indicators, and any communication patterns between the human and the predator." Science Officer Krell's tentacles unfurled slightly, a gesture that among her species indicated hesitation. "Captain, if I may speak freely, this behavior appears to demonstrate what humans refer to as compassion. It is a concept our xenoanthropologists have been studying, though its evolutionary advantage remains unclear." Captain Zethrol's head snapped toward the science officer, his eyes pulsing with an angry red light. "Officer Krell, compassion toward one's own kind has evolutionary advantages. It ensures group survival. Compassion toward a competitive predator species is evolutionary suicide. It defies the natural order." "Yet, there they are," Officer Pix chimed in, her voice resonating like crystal bells. "Defying the natural order, as you say. Perhaps our understanding of the natural order is incomplete." Captain Zethral drew himself up to his full height, towering over his subordinates. "This discussion borders on heresy against established science. I will be submitting a formal report to the High Council, along with a recommendation for your psychological evaluation. Officer Krell, your empathy subroutines may be malfunctioning if you find this aberrant behavior acceptable." As Captain Zethral stormed off the observation deck, Science Officer Krell extended one tentacle toward the screen, tracing the outline of the human who continued to sit vigil beside the dying wolf. "Perhaps," she whispered to Officer Pix, "it is not our equipment that requires diagnostic evaluation, but our understanding of what constitutes natural behavior." Officer Pix's crystalline form glimmered in what might have been interpreted as agreement. "I have already transmitted a separate report to Elder Frixus. The Council should have all perspectives before making a determination." Both officers returned their attention to the screen, where the human remained, steadfast in its vigil, as the wolf's breathing grew more labored with each passing moment. The High Council chamber of the Galactic Federation sprawled across a vast asteroid, hollowed out and transformed into the political heart of 27 spacefaring civilizations. The circular room rose in concentric tiers, each level occupied by representatives of different species, all facing the central podium, where Elder Frixus, the ancient Chronomadian, hovered in his gravitation field. "This emergency session of the High Council is now in session," Elder Frixus announced, his voice simultaneously young and old, a peculiarity of his species' non-linear experience of time. "We have received disturbing reports from the observation vessel, Compassionate Inquiry, regarding behavioral anomalies on Terror 3, known to its inhabitants as Earth. Captain Zethral, you may present your findings." Captain Zethral stepped forward, his scales now a formal, deep blue. Behind him, a massive holographic display flickered to life, showing the human sitting beside the dying wolf. "Esteemed council members," he began, "what you are witnessing represents a fundamental threat to our understanding of evolutionary principles. The human species has been observed repeatedly engaging in care behaviors toward apex predators, creatures that, by all natural laws, should be competitors or threats." The chamber erupted in murmurs and the various sounds of shock appropriate to each species. A Volian representative emitted a series of rapid clicks. Meridonian spines stood on end, glowing with alarm. Captain Zethral continued, "Activating a sequence of recordings. These are not isolated incidents. Humans routinely domesticate predator species, sharing their dwellings with smaller predators they call pets. More alarmingly, they rehabilitate injured apex predators and release them back into the wild." The holographic display now showed humans sleeping alongside tigers, feeding eagles, and swimming with massive aquatic predators. General Morax, the military representative of the metallic Tirvidian race, rose from his seat, his voice booming through the chamber like thunder. "This represents a clear and present danger to galactic stability. If predator species can be turned into allies through this compassion, the balance of power throughout habitable worlds could be fundamentally altered. I recommend immediate quarantine of Terror 3 and its inhabitants." Dr. Elanthivos, the renowned evolutionary biologist, countered immediately. "With respect, General, you're overreacting. This is certainly an evolutionary anomaly, but not necessarily a threat. Humans appear to have developed an alternative survival strategy, one based on cooperation rather than competition. It's unprecedented, but not inherently dangerous." "Not dangerous?" General Morax's metallic features contorted in what passed for incredulity among his kind. "A species that can turn apex predators into companions could potentially do the same with any species. They could disrupt the natural development of countless worlds." Elder Frixus raised a hand. silencing the growing debate. His ancient eyes, which had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations, fixed on the continuing feed from Terror 3, where the human still sat with the wolf, whose breathing had grown more labored. "What is the purpose of this behavior?" Elder Phrixus asked, his voice quiet, yet carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. "If there is no survival advantage, why does the human remain with a dying predator?" Science Officer Krell, who had been summoned to the session, stepped forward. "Our analysis suggests that the human is providing comfort. The predator is beyond saving. Its injuries are too severe. Yet the human stays, speaking softly, maintaining physical contact. Our linguistic analysis indicates the human is saying, 'You're not alone. I'm here with you until the end.'" A heavy silence fell over the council chamber. "Comfort to a dying predator," Elder Phrixus repeated slowly. "What possible evolutionary advantage could this behavior confer?" Dr. Alanthivos cleared his throat. "Perhaps the advantage is not immediately obvious in conventional evolutionary terms. Humans appear to have developed a complex moral framework that extends beyond their own species. They value what they call compassion as an end in itself, not merely as a means to survival." "Sentimental nonsense," General Morax scoffed. "No species evolves traits without survival value." "And yet," Elder Phrixus mused, "here we observe a trait that appears to contradict that assertion. Perhaps the survival value exists on a level we have not yet comprehended." He turned to Captain Zethral. "Your recommendation, Captain." Captain Zethral straightened. "I recommend a closer observation mission. We need to understand the full extent of this behavioral anomaly and its implications for our understanding of evolutionary principles." Elder Phrixus nodded slowly. "The Council approves this recommendation. Captain Thex will lead a ground team to observe these humans more closely. This session is adjourned until we receive further data." As the Council members dispersed, Elder Phrixus remained, his gaze fixed on the holographic image of the human and the wolf. In his countless years of existence, he had seen many wonders, but this simple act of interspecies compassion seemed to touch something deep within his ancient consciousness. "Perhaps," he whispered to himself, "we have been asking the wrong questions all along." The ground team from the Compassionate Inquiry deployed under cover of darkness, their adaptive camouflage rendering them nearly invisible against the backdrop of the Terran Wildlife Rehabilitation Center. Captain Thex, who had replaced Captain Zethral for the ground mission due to his experience in xenoanthropology, led the small team of 4 specialists toward the main building. "Remember," Captain Thex subvocalized through their neural link, "this is strictly an observation mission. No contact with the indigenous species. No interference with their activities. We are here to observe and record only." The Rehabilitation Center was a sprawling complex of buildings and outdoor enclosures, nestled in a valley surrounded by dense forest. Soft lighting illuminated pathways between structures, and the team could hear the occasional calls of various animals from the enclosures. Life signs indicate approximately 12 humans currently within the facility, reported Biometrics Officer Voss, her sensory frills vibrating with the influx of data. Most are in a state of rest, but 3 remain active in the central building. "That's our target," Captain Thex decided. "We'll observe the active humans first. Their interactions during work periods may be most informative." The team moved silently toward the central building, a single-story structure with large windows that offered a clear view of the interior. Inside, 3 humans moved among workstations and medical equipment. One human in particular, tall, with dark hair streaked with silver, appeared to be directing the others. "Subject designation Alpha," Captain Thex noted for the record. "Appears to be a leader or authority figure based on behavioral cues." Through the windows, they could see the humans treating various injured animals: a young deer with a splinted leg, a hawk with bandaged wings, and in a separate, secure area, a sedated bear undergoing some kind of medical procedure. "They're healing them," Biometrics Officer Voss whispered, her voice tinged with disbelief. "Predator and prey alike. They expend resources on species that offer no apparent benefit to their survival." Captain Thex was about to respond when the door to the building suddenly opened, and the human designated as Alpha stepped outside, looking directly at their position. "I know you're there," the human called out, her voice calm and steady. "Your camouflage technology is impressive, but it doesn't mask your heat signatures completely. Please, there's no need to hide. I've been hoping you'd make contact eventually." The team froze, their training momentarily forgotten in the face of this unexpected development. "Well," Captain Thex finally said, disabling his camouflage and stepping forward. "It appears first contact protocols have been somewhat compromised." The human smiled, a facial expression the team had studied but never witnessed firsthand. "I'm Dr. Elilanena Kavari. Welcome to Earth. Would you like to come inside and see what we do here?" Captain Thex hesitated only briefly before making a decision that would alter the course of interspecies relations forever. "Yes, Dr. Kavari, we would—" Inside the rehabilitation center, Dr. Elilanena Kavari moved with practiced efficiency among the various medical stations, explaining their work to the fascinated alien observers. The other two humans, initially startled by the visitors, had quickly adapted and continued their tasks under Dr. Kavari's calm direction. "This facility specializes in the rehabilitation of injured wildlife," she explained, gesturing to the various enclosures where animals in different stages of recovery rested. "Our goal is to heal them and return them to their natural habitats whenever possible." Captain Thex studied the human closely, noting the lack of fear or aggression in her demeanor. "Even the predators? You heal creatures that could potentially hunt and kill your own kind?" Dr. Kavari nodded, her expression serious. "Especially the predators. They're vital to maintaining healthy ecosystems. Without wolves, mountain lions, and bears, the entire balance of our natural world would collapse. But they pose a direct threat to human survival," Biometrics Officer Voss interjected, her frills fluttering in confusion. A small smile crossed Dr. Kavari's face. "That's a common misconception. Healthy predators rarely attack humans unless provoked or desperate. We've learned to coexist. More importantly, we've learned that our survival is interconnected with theirs." She led them to a window overlooking a large enclosure where several wolves moved about freely. "These wolves will be released back into the wild next month. They'll help control deer populations, which in turn prevents overgrazing, which protects plant diversity, which supports countless other species, including, ultimately, humans." Captain Thex processed this information slowly. "Your species has prioritized systemic balance over immediate survival advantage. This is unprecedented in our studies of evolutionary development." "Not unprecedented," Dr. Kavari corrected gently. "Just rare. Humans haven't always understood this balance either. We've made terrible mistakes, driving many species to extinction before we realized the consequences. What you're seeing here is the result of hard-earned wisdom, not some inherent virtue." She led them further into the facility, to a quieter room where a single wolf lay on a padded surface, its breathing shallow. Captain Thex recognized it immediately as the same wolf from the observation footage. "This is Shadowfall," Dr. Kavari said softly, approaching the dying animal. "He was the alpha male of a pack we've been monitoring for years. He was attacked by poachers, humans who still kill illegally, and his injuries are too severe for recovery." She sat beside the wolf, gently stroking its fur. The scene was identical to what the compassionate inquiry had observed. Only now, they were witnessing it directly. "Why do you sit with him?" Captain Thex asked, voicing the question that had puzzled the High Council. "If he cannot be saved, Why expend the emotional and temporal resources? Dr. Kavari looked up, her eyes reflecting a depth of emotion that the aliens found difficult to categorize. Because no sentient being should die alone and afraid. Because offering comfort to the suffering is what makes us truly human. But there is no evolutionary advantage to this behavior. Biometrics Officer Voss persisted. It does not enhance your survival prospects. Doesn't it? Dr. Kavari challenged softly. Humans evolved as social creatures. Our greatest strength has never been our physical prowess or natural weapons. It's been our ability to cooperate, to solve problems collectively, to care for one another. Compassion isn't separate from our survival strategy. It's central to it. She continued to stroke the wolf's fur as she spoke. We extended that compassion first to our own kind, then to species we domesticated, and eventually to the wild creatures we share this planet with. Each step has enhanced our understanding of the world and our place in it. Captain Thex found himself moved by the human's words and actions in a way that his scientific training had not prepared him for. Your council, your governing bodies, they support this work. Dr. Kavari laughed softly. Not always and not perfectly. Like any species, we have our conflicts and disagreements. But increasingly, yes, we've recognized that preserving biodiversity and treating other species with respect isn't just morally right, it's essential for our own long-term survival. As they continued their conversation, the wolf's breathing grew more labored. Dr. Kavari's attention immediately returned fully to the dying animal, her hand steady on its flank, her voice murmuring gentle reassurances. Captain Thex signaled to his team that it was time to withdraw. They had gathered more than enough data for the High Council, though he suspected that the most significant insights would be difficult to quantify in a standard report. As they left, Captain Thex turned back one last time to observe Dr. Kavari, sitting vigilant beside the dying predator, an image that contradicted everything he had been taught about the natural order, yet somehow seemed more right, more natural, than anything he had previously understood. The High Council chamber hummed with tension as Captain Thex completed his report. The holographic displays had shown continuous footage of the team's encounter with Dr. Kavari and the operations of the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center. Now, as the final images faded, a profound silence settled over the assembled representatives. Elder Phrixus, who had remained utterly still throughout the presentation, finally stirred. You actually engaged in first contact, Captain Thex. That was not part of your mission parameters. Captain Thex stood firmly, his posture respectful, but unapologetic. The human detected our presence immediately. Elder, once discovered, I made a field assessment that diplomatic engagement would yield more valuable information than retreat. And did it? Elder Phrixus asked, his ancient eyes unreadable. It did. Captain Thex activated one final recording, the original footage that had started this inquiry, showing the human sitting beside the dying wolf. We must reconsider our fundamental understanding of evolutionary principles. The human, Dr. Kavari, explained that their species evolved not primarily through physical dominance, but through cooperation and problem-solving. Their compassion, even for predator species, is not an evolutionary aberration, but an extension of the very traits that enabled their survival. General Morax's metallic form vibrated with barely contained frustration. This changes nothing. Whether their behavior evolved or not, it still represents a potential disruption to natural development across countless worlds. With respect, General, Captain Thex countered, it changes everything. If compassion and cooperation can be as successful an evolutionary strategy as competition and dominance, then our entire framework for predicting species development must be reconsidered. Dr. Elanthivos, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke. The data supports Captain Thex's assessment. Human civilization has achieved remarkable stability and technological advancement despite, or perhaps because of, these cooperative tendencies. Their care for predator species hasn't weakened their position in their ecosystem. If anything, it has strengthened it by preserving biodiversity and ecological balance. The council erupted into heated debate, with representatives from different species arguing from perspectives shaped by their own evolutionary histories. Some, like the hive-minded collectics, immediately grasped the advantages of the human approach. Others, like the solitary dracons, remained deeply skeptical. Throughout the debate, Elder Phrixus said nothing, his attention fixed on the continuous feed from Terror 3, where Dr. Kavari still sat with the wolf, whose life was now clearly ebbing away. "Silence," Elder Phrixus finally commanded, his voice cutting through the cacophony. All eyes turned to the ancient being as he gestured toward the feed. "Observe. The predator is dying. It can offer nothing to the human now. No future benefit. No knowledge. No resources. Yet still, the human remains." The council watched as Dr. Kavari gently cradled the wolf's head, tears streaming down her face as the great predator took its final breaths. Even after the wolf had gone still, she continued to stroke its fur, honoring its passing with her presence. "We have been asking whether this behavior conforms to our understanding of evolutionary principles," Elder Phrixus said softly. "Perhaps we should instead ask why we assumed that compassion was not a part of natural law to begin with." He rose to his full height, addressing the entire council. "For too long, we have viewed the cosmos through the lens of competition alone. We have classified species based on their capacity for dominance, their position in what we called the natural order. But what if that view has been incomplete? What if cooperation, compassion, and care are equally fundamental to the fabric of life?" General Morax began to object, but Elder Phrixus raised a hand, silencing him. "The humans have not violated natural law. General, they have expanded our understanding of it, and for that, we should be grateful." He turned to Captain Thex. "Your mission parameters are hereby expanded. You will establish formal diplomatic contact with the humans of Terror 3, starting with this Dr. Kavari. We have much to learn from their perspective." As the council session concluded, Elder Phrixus remained, watching as Dr. Kavari finally rose from beside the wolf's body, her vigil complete, in her movements, in her evident grief for a creature not of her kind. The ancient Chronomadian recognized something profound, a glimpse of a future where the boundaries between species might be bridged by something more powerful than fear or dominance. "Perhaps," he whispered to himself, "this is what we have been evolving toward all along." 10 years passed, a mere blink in the cosmic timescale, but a period of transformative change in interspecies relations. The Terran Wildlife Cultural Exchange Program welcomed its 27th participating species as diplomatic shuttles descended through Earth's atmosphere, carrying representatives from across the galaxy. The program's headquarters had grown from Dr. Kavari's modest rehabilitation center into a sprawling complex of research facilities, diplomatic residences, and vast rewilding zones where endangered species from dozens of worlds were studied and protected. Captain Zethrol, now Ambassador Zethrol, stood beside Dr. Kavari on a viewing platform overlooking the wolf reintroduction area. Below them, a pack of gray wolves, descendants of Shadowfall's original pack, moved confidently through the forest edge, hunting as their ancestors had for millennia. "I still remember how angry I was when I first saw you sitting with that dying wolf," Zethrol admitted, his scales now a peaceful blue-green. "I was certain you were violating some fundamental law of nature." Dr. Kavari smiled, the years having added more silver to her dark hair, but none of the weariness one might expect from someone who had become the primary liaison between humanity and 27 alien civilizations. "And now?" she asked. "Now I understand that the law I thought you were breaking was merely the limit of my own understanding." Zethrol replied, Your compassion wasn't unnatural. My definition of nature was simply too narrow. They watched as a young draconian researcher, supervised by one of Dr. Kavari's colleagues, cautiously approached the wolfpack's periphery, collecting behavioral data. The solitary, traditionally aggressive species had been among the most resistant to the principles of the exchange program. Yet here was one of their brightest minds, learning the value of interspecies cooperation firsthand. The Lunar Crane Project reports complete success, Dr. Kavari said, changing the subject. The species was down to fewer than 30 individuals when we began. Now there are over 2,000, with populations established on 3 different continents. Zethrol nodded approvingly. And the Venusian salamander transplantation? Still in the early stages, but the preliminary data is promising. They're adapting well to Earth's similar but less hostile environment. We believe they'll establish breeding populations within 2 years. A soft chime sounded from Zethrol's communication device. The delegates from Proxima Centauri have arrived for the Xenobiological Summit. As the senior ambassador, I should greet them. Of course, Dr. Kavari agreed. I'll join you shortly. I want to check on the new wolf pups first. As Zethrol departed, Dr. Kavari remained on the platform, her gaze moving from the wolves below to the sky above, where the silhouettes of diplomatic vessels from across the galaxy hung in orbit. 10 years ago, she had sat beside a dying predator, offering comfort in its final moments. She could never have imagined that this simple act of compassion would catalyze a revolution in interspecies relations throughout the known universe. The Compassionate Inquiry, now the flagship of a vast scientific and diplomatic fleet, had just returned from establishing wildlife preservation protocols on a previously unexplored world in the Andromeda Galaxy. Communications Officer Pix, promoted to Cultural Liaison, had successfully mediated a conflict between 2 predator species on that world, applying the principles she had learned from human wildlife management practices. Dr. Kavari's communication device activated, displaying a message from the Galactic High Council. The Council had unanimously approved the establishment of the Interspecies Compassion Directive, a set of principles that would guide all future first contact scenarios and ecological interventions across the galaxy. She smiled as she read Elder Phrixus's personal note attached to the official announcement. What began with one human sitting beside a dying wolf has evolved into a movement that will preserve countless species across the cosmos. You have taught us that true strength lies not in domination, but in connection. The universe is richer for this lesson. As she made her way down to the wolf enclosure, Dr. Kavari reflected on how far they had come. The Rehabilitation Center had expanded into a galaxy-wide conservation movement. Predator species once feared were now understood as essential components of healthy ecosystems. And humanity, once viewed with suspicion for its aberrant compassion, was now recognized as a pioneer in a new understanding of evolutionary success. At the edge of the enclosure, she paused, watching as a wolf pup, a 5th-generation descendant of Shadowfall's lineage, playfully tumbled with its siblings. Life continuing, evolving, thriving under the protective umbrella of interspecies cooperation. In the distance, Ambassador Zethrol greeted the Proxima Centauri delegation, his posture reflecting the diplomatic skills he had honed over the past decade. The former captain who had once reported her for violating natural law now championed those same principles throughout the galaxy. As the sun began to set over the valley, Dr. Kavari opened the gates to the wolves' enclosure, allowing them access to the wider wilderness beyond, a symbolic act repeated at rehabilitation centers across Earth, and now on 23 other worlds. The gates opening not just to freedom for individual creatures, but to a new understanding of humanity's place in the cosmic web of life. The lead wolf paused at the threshold, looking back at Dr. Kavari with eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of its wild ancestry. Then, with a powerful leap, it crossed into the wilderness, its pack following close behind, not fleeing from humanity, but coexisting with it in a balanced harmony that now served as a model for civilizations across the stars. As darkness fell, Dr. Kavari made her way to the Xenobiological Summit, where representatives from 27 species awaited her insights on compassion as an evolutionary strategy. Behind her, the rehabilitation center's lights glowed softly in the gathering dusk, a beacon of hope in a universe that was slowly learning that the greatest power came not from dominance, but from connection. And somewhere in the hills beyond, a wolf howled, a sound that once symbolized humanity's deepest fears, now transformed into an anthem of a new kind of relationship between species, between worlds, between the stars themselves. For in that simple act of sitting beside a dying predator, humanity had demonstrated a truth that would reshape the cosmos, that compassion was not weakness, but strength, not aberration, but evolution's highest achievement, not a violation of natural law, but its most profound expression. The universe, vast and indifferent as it might be, had been forever changed by this understanding. And as Dr. Kavari joined the assembled delegates from across the galaxy, she carried with her the legacy of that wolf and all the wild creatures whose lives had intersected with humanity's journey, teachers who had shown us that the true measure of an advanced species was not its capacity to dominate, but its willingness to care. In the chamber of the Xenobiological Summit, Ambassador Zethrol introduced Dr. Kavari to thunderous applause, a sound produced in 27 different ways by 27 different species, all united by a shared recognition that they had witnessed the dawn of a new era in cosmic evolution, an era that began with the simple, revolutionary sight of a human sitting beside a dying apex predator, offering comfort where once there would have been fear, and in so doing, answering the most fundamental question of all: what truly makes a species successful in the grand design of the universe? Not teeth, not claws, not dominance or aggression, but the capacity to transcend the boundaries of self and species, to recognize the value of all life, and to offer compassion even to those who cannot repay it. This was humanity's gift to the stars, and the stars, in their ancient wisdom, had finally learned to receive it.